The new Disney Star Wars Rey Skywalker movie, helmed by Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, that's caused a lot of consternation in the Star Wars fandom in recent days, well, it just might be the best thing to happen to the franchise in over 10 years.
Men, reach down into your pants, find your balls and your and be okay with it. We can take a woman directing a film in Star Wars and live.
Stick with me on this one. Renegade Online. Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. Make sure to join us every Sunday afternoon at 6 p.m. Eastern right here on Valiant Renegade for the live show. It's not just about social media and the YouTubers when it comes to quote-unquote Disney Star Wars shills. We've also got articles like this from Paul Tassi at Forbes magazine. Now, to be clear, we're big fans of Forbes magazine here on this channel, and we've cited them quite frequently. They do great work, but every now and again, we've got to take some issue and respectfully disagree with some of the hot takes that they may be giving out. Disney Star Wars directors make men uncomfortable quote is 8 years out of context. According to Paul Tassi at Forbes magazine, it is unequivocally absolutely disgusting how certain segments of the Star Wars fan base and even politicians like Ted Cruz are piling on upcoming Star Wars director Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. This time for a quote where she said that she wants to make men uncomfortable. The video that Cruz is sharing from anti-trans crusader Matt Walsh, really, shows Obaid-Chinoy on a panel, and it's being characterized as a recent quote about her plan for her Rey-led Star Wars movie. That's not at all true.
I like to make men uncomfortable. I enjoy making men uncomfortable.
In reality, this quote is not even from this decade. It's 8 years old, and the interview is in the context of her award-winning films about honor killings and acid attacks against women in her home country of Pakistan. That brutal patriarchy is full of the men she, quote, likes making uncomfortable. But now it's being dragged up, stripped of context, and using in the latest anti-women crusade that has plagued Star Wars for years. Already feeding the maw of outrage, YouTubers who make widely watched videos about how her upcoming Rey movie is, quote, doomed because of her feminism. Now let's stop right there and discuss all of the things that are actually out of context in that paragraph. Yeah, a bunch of YouTubers, including myself, have brought that quote up from Miss Obaid-Chinoy from 2015, but the issue there, of course, is that there have been subsequent comments that seem to reinforce it. It's not just that comment in and of itself, it's everything else that she has said since being announced as the director of this new Rey Palpatine film.
I think at the heart of everything, I am a storyteller and an activist. And my body of work over the last 20 years has been guided by my activism, and every single piece of work that I've ever created has a piece of activism in it. It could be very overt or it could be covert, but it is there.
We're in 2024 now, and I think it's about time that we had a woman come forward to shape the story in a galaxy far, far away.
And just like some of those folks out there in social media and YouTube,
we can take a woman directing a film in Star Wars and live.
The issue they seem to be missing is that fans don't have a problem with a woman directing a Star Wars film. They have a problem with this particular woman directing a Star Wars film.
And every single piece of work that I've ever created has a piece of activism in it.
If you look at it logically, she simply doesn't have the chops to be doing this. This is somebody who, A, by her own admission, never been to film school, which in and of itself is not that big a deal. But more importantly, the only things that she has done in the past are very small budget documentary films. there's nothing on her resume that qualifies her to helm a $300 million major motion picture production, and certainly nothing in her resume that would qualify her, in addition to that, to do a Star Wars film. But Paul Tassi continues. This is the second time in a few weeks an Obaid-Chinoy quote has made the rounds in this crowd, with the last one actually about Star Wars itself, albeit willingly misread many times over. There, Obaid-Chinoy said, quote, "We're in 2024, and it's about time we have a woman shape a story in a galaxy far, far away." This led men to start listing important female Star Wars characters, but Obaid-Chinoy is obviously referring to her being the first female director of any Star Wars movie ever, which is just a fact. But again, I ask, what does that actually matter that she's a woman or the first woman to direct a Star Wars theatrical release? Once again, her resume has nothing in it that suggests that she is even remotely qualified for this job. And Tassi continues, as I've said previously, this discourse is going to be an utter nightmare. Obaid-Chinoy is going to keep delivering completely normal quotes about empowering women, and Ted Cruz and Matt Walsh and 200 YouTubers in their millions of subscribers are going to lose their minds. Plus, her film is about Rey, the character accused of being a Mary Sue, not earning her place as a powerful Force-using lead for the duration of the new trilogy. What's ironic is that Obaid-Chinoy's quote about making men uncomfortable does stay true today, but instead of confronting men about horrific acid attacks, we have men, he says, being made uncomfortable by a woman directing a Star Wars movie, starring a woman, and talking about it publicly. It's going to be a long few years. Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a long few years with articles like that one from Forbes that don't seem to understand the problem, the fundamental problems, plural, with this film. And it's for those reasons that I honestly believe that this new Obaid-Chinoy, Rey Skywalker, Disney Star Wars film is going to be the best thing to happen to the franchise in a very long time. If you recall, several months ago, I did a video that went back and calculated how much money the first 5 films that Disney did with Star Wars cost and what they made. That puts the total production cost the Walt Disney Company spent to create those 5 Star Wars films at $2.29 billion US dollars. And of course, that doesn't include 1 penny of marketing any of those 5 films. That would be an additional expense. And we can easily assume that each of those films commanded a very hefty marketing budget, at least $150 million apiece. So if we add those marketing costs in to what the total production costs were for these 5 films, we're looking at a total figure of somewhere north of $3 billion. In other words, the rentals of $2.84 billion that Disney received back from the box office did not cover everything they spent to produce and market these films. And this new Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy helmed Disney Star Wars film, featuring one of the least popular leads in Star Wars history, Rey Skywalker, is probably exactly what Disney needs, and that is a major flop, because there doesn't seem to be anything going forward that suggests this movie will be anything but. Does everybody remember this mess with the new Disney live-action remake with Snow White and, of course, Rachel Zegler, who's playing the titular character? Yeah, this whole issue with Star Wars, not much different at all. And of course, things got so bad with Rachel Zegler and Snow White that movie had to be delayed a full year to basically go back to the drawing board and reshoot quite a bit of it, remap out the movie, because the backlash was so bad, there was really little other choice that Disney could do. But this new Star Wars film is in a bit of a different boat. Unlike the Snow White movie, this Star Wars film hasn't even started principal photography yet. That's supposed to begin in the next few months. And as of right now, at least, the thought process is that Bob Iger and the Walt Disney Company is still trying to target a Christmas 2025 release for this film. But it seems increasingly likely, given the delays from the actors and writers strike that lasted nearly a year, all through 2023, that this movie's chances of actually hitting that mark are growing slimmer by the day. It seems more likely at this point that by the time they finish both principal photography and post-production in this film, and what has become commonplace with Disney after the fact, meaning a lot of reshoots, it doesn't seem that Christmas of 2025 is going to be a likely landing spot. I suspect that this movie is probably going to get pushed back into 2026, and that begins to make things more interesting. Let's remind everybody of this story from July of last year, 2023, when Bob Iger self-extended his own contract through the end of 2026. Bob Iger was originally supposed to be leaving at the end of 2024 after he was brought back in late 22, replacing his successor up to that point, Bob Chapek. And one of the first things that we heard that Bob Iger did was to make a push to get Star Wars back into theaters, and that movie would be helmed by their own Disney Star Wars invention, Rey Palpatine. Sure enough, a few months later at Star Wars Celebration in April of 23, Daisy Ridley was walked out on stage and introduced by Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. But if we start to think about the timing of this with Bob Iger, who is so far scheduled to leave again at the end of 2026, let's think about this for a second. Bob Iger is going to still be at the Walt Disney Company when this movie releases, or at least so far as of right now, we would expect to be the case. And by the time this movie comes out, in theory, Disney should have concluded its search for a successor to Bob Iger, a new CEO that would take over Disney at the beginning of 2027. If this new Star Wars movie flops as hard as, say, The Little Mermaid, turning in around $500 million or so globally, or God forbid, The Marvels at 200-something million globally, then that's going to put an enormous amount of pressure on a new CEO that would theoretically be mere months away from taking over the Walt Disney Company. Even though that successor may have been handpicked by Bob Iger and Bob Iger's puppet board at Bob Iger Incorporated, it's not going to take very long when that pressure mounts from both places like the Hollywood trades and the financial and Wall Street trades as another Star Wars failure looms large over the House of Mouse. How long will that successor be able to survive that pressure before perhaps hitting a hard reset button on the entire franchise, maybe giving it a break for a few years, and then potentially going back, hopefully, to the characters and the stories of Star Wars that made it so commercially viable for decades, the things that are still selling tons of Lego sets and toys every year. Original George Lucas Star Wars, not Disney-branded Star Wars. And that's why I think this new Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, feminist, activism-driven, female-led, Rey Skywalker-led Star Wars movie is probably going to be the best thing to happen to this franchise in over a decade since Disney bought it, because it will be the final nail that a new CEO at the Walt Disney Company will be very hard-pressed to continue on with. Disney Star Wars is hanging by a thread, and this new movie may just give that new CEO at Disney in a couple of years an opportunity to cut it. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.